What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Next Deal podcast. I say this almost every time, but I am really excited for today's guest. Jason Lewis is a friend of ours. Known him for, I don't know, probably 5-6 years at this point through Collective Genius. If you guys are not familiar with Jason Lewis, he's a real estate investor. He is the owner of the Investor Machine, which provides amazing data for real estate investors. It's usually a lot more challenging to get. Has been in real estate about 12 years and has done over 1,000 deals at this point and helped everyone else do countless more deals as well. I was saying this beforehand when we were kind of talking before the show, but one of my favorite things about Jason is he's very data driven and gives a ton of value. So I'm super excited to have you on, Jason. Welcome.
Awesome. Grateful to be here.
Likewise, grateful to have you here. The thing we always start out with is just kind of tell us a little bit about just how you got started in real estate. I know you worked for someone for a little bit, but curious what kind of got you started and how your journey has progressed over the years.
Yeah. So my getting started journey is a little different than a lot of other people's, but with some similarities. So
okay.
I got back from a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in November of 2008. So like right when it all went south is kind of when my adult life started. So security was kind of the name of the game. And I was raised super middle class. Like I barely even knew an entrepreneur. And so it was like, go to school, get a degree, pick something safe. So I picked radiation therapy and went all in, focused, like cancer's never going to go away. Old people are never going to go away. I'm going to just focus on this and make sure I get my degree and live my good, happy little middle class life. Along the way in school, started listening to books. All of the, Richest Man in Babylon, Think and Grow Rich, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you name it. And it started changing my mind a little bit along the way. And from Richest Man in Babylon, I wanted to keep 10% of everything I made, but I had no idea how to not invest in glass that I thought was emeralds. So I was like, real estate. Then I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad and was like, played the cash flow game and was like, financial independence. Nothing else in the world matters. Holy crap, I've got to do this. That said, I kind of had a dream of like, I'm going to do that on the side while doing radiation therapy. Plowed all the way through, got the radiation therapy degree, got an on-call job in radiation therapy, and then was like, I just can't do this for the rest of my life. Decided, so this is 2012 at this point, just the absolute peak of real estate investing where real estate investors were everywhere. That's reverse. 2012 was the bottom of the trough where they were pretty hard to come by. So luckily I knew of one real estate investor and I asked him for a job and he told me, no, pass, not interested. So then I asked him for a job a second time and he said, still pass. So then I asked him for a job a third time and it was still a pass. So the fourth time I said, hey, I'm going to make you a deal. I will work for you for free until I'm worth something. And then at that point, just pay me that. And he was like, I guess I'll try it. So we shared the same desk and I started basically as like the guy getting lunch, basic executive assistant. And then slowly worked my way up from there to eventually like COO, running everything but construction in the company. And that was from 2012 to 2017. And we started doing basically one home a month, which, by the way, back then, all you had to do to find a home to buy, you didn't need all the sweet data that I've got. All you needed to do to buy a home was go to HUDHomestore.com or the MLS or any bank owned site and say, I'll take
you just walk outside and find one at that point.
Yeah. But we factored into our numbers minimum 3 to 4 months to sell it, plus a couple of price drops because it was so hard to sell houses back then. So very different world than now. So fast forward that 2017, that's when I started out on my own. Left there, started my own thing. And the very first channel, and back then we didn't do a ton of marketing. We were definitely heavier on the agent relationships, buying from other wholesalers, and we did much more flipping. Started on my own, and the very first marketing I did was sending mail. So pulled a list. It was a very simple list. And I mean, I did basically, if it could be wrong, I did it. I had no CRM. I put my cell phone number on the postcard. I think I said the Tom
return
Cole
mail address.
Trime card. Yeah. So I've got all this return mail. All these people are calling me saying, take me off the list. I've got like, I remember being at my grandma's house and like getting one of these phone calls, somebody swearing at me writing on a post-it note the address. Like, okay, I got to make sure I take this person off. No ability to follow up. Like, you know, basically you name it, did it wrong, but it still worked. And I was like, oh, this is cool. Bought a house from a cat lady. Okay. Exactly what you would expect. She left me a video testimonial. She's great. And then it just kind of continued. But the hard part was as time went on, the market got more and more competitive. There reached a point where all I did was I mailed that same basic card and I just pulled the equity list. I was like, everybody with equity, I'm just going to mail them all in all of these markets. Easy piece of cake. But as the market got more and more difficult, I had to do increasingly more and more and more to get the same return on the postcards or on mail. So that's when I started adding things like, okay, now I'm going to have a virtual assistant pulling motivations directly from the courthouse and from the county, getting the probates, getting the evictions, getting the water shutoff notices, getting the code violations. Now I'm going to start mailing these. Then we started getting super granular on every different aspect of a property and stacking all of that against each other too. So giving a certain number of points to an 800 square foot home rather than a 2,000 square foot home, giving a certain number of points to a 1980s rather than a 1920s. So that was kind of the next step in the evolution, is rather than just saying I'm going to mail these motivated stack lists, I'm also going to add stacking points to every different aspect of a property. So that got me a long ways. Then the next step was, well, but what if those motivations don't actually work in that market? And what if in one market, a 1980s home actually is more likely to sell to you than a 1920s home. And in another market, it's the 1920s more than the 1940s. So the next step then, which is just in the last year, was, okay, we're going to go in and analyze everyone in your market, figure out exactly who sold to investors, then give the right number of points based off of who actually sold. So in one market, a water shutoff list may be awesome, and in another market, it may be terrible. So now that we actually know who sells to investors, we can appropriately focus all of these systems, all of these points, and say, boom, Louisville, this is your list. St. Louis, this is your list. In Baton Rouge, this is your list. And those lists and the way we fill that out may look pretty wildly different. Plus actually getting specifics back on the creative. That's why we're doing so many tests with you guys on the creative, is because we're saying, okay, when we do this creative, I was just talking to my team about this earlier today. We've got a guy in LA where it was like, hey, we sent 2 split test creatives. If we just go with this one instead of this one, we just increased your responses. But this one performed twice as good. So since it was half, you just got a 25% better return by just running with this one creative.
Yeah.
And then we can take and apply that across everybody in all markets, be running all these split tests at once. It's cool. So that's kind of like the super elevator start to where I got here. I gave you 11 years and 15 minutes.
That's all good.
Now we can go deeper into some of that.
I think one of the things you mentioned that I saw in a demo with you guys probably a month or so ago was the differences in lists for markets. Because that's something that I don't think I even realized was as big of a thing as it was, right? So you were showing us some properties that, I don't remember the variables on it, but one list worked, like you said, very well in St. Louis, but then you go 6 hours east to Nashville, right? It's like 4 hours, but anyway, you go over there and like maybe it doesn't work anymore. So basing it off of that kind of stuff is genius for what Investor Machine is doing.
Well, and especially for you guys with what we did in Louisiana, that place plays by its own set of rules. What we did and built there had nothing to do with anything that I've ever done before. Like we had to run it back to our data analysts to then run it back to the data provider like twice to be like, are we sure this is true? Like, I think this might be wrong. No, that's really true. Okay, we'll run with it then. Yeah.
Yeah. So having that market specific data is I think huge. And it's something too that, because we get asked all the time, like, hey, what lists are working? And we have a pretty good idea from what we see just kind of around the country, but knowing those different variables on there and what's going to perform better, I think just adds to the marketing for everybody on how to improve the amount of money or how to optimize the amount of money that they're putting out for marketing right now.
Yeah. When you get down to it, it's really simple. It's just math, right?
Yeah.
This list. So we take everything on the average. So we say, okay, if we sent the most average postcard and did every door direct mail, it would be this number, right? Let's say, your response rate would be this percent and your cost per lead would be this percent. Okay, great. If we can do a 30% better creative, we just improved on that 30%. And if we can take your zip codes and dial them in and get another 20%, boom, now we just got 50% better. Yep. Now we optimize it based on motivations. Boom, we just added another 50%. Now you can even do like lot size. In some areas, lot size isn't great, but in some areas, there's a pretty strong indication on these lot sizes sell to investors more than these lot sizes. You can do it on how long they've lived in the home, how much equity they have in the home. And you can find all these little random things in there. You stack all these percentages, and all of a sudden, what was the average before, which is what I started with, I'm going to mail the equity list, a basic card. I can get 5x the results of that or more based off of 10% here, 50% here, 20% there, 30% there. And that's what our team is constantly looking at, is where are these percents to go get a little bit more to drive down the cost per lead.
Yep. Get that. Exactly. Cost per lead, getting that down.
And then the other big one is, which my favorite part of mail. So for me and my Utah company, I've got like, I think we're at 19, 20 different marketing channels that we do. Okay. And cost per lead is great, but more important is ultimately ROI. And my investor machine lists always produce the very highest ROI of like the biggest deals to lead to a really, really big ROI. And let me rephrase that. My investor machine is not always my highest ROI. Sometimes I'll get like the random niche PPL source or something that like I spent $2,000 on got one monster deal that'll come in and just like smoke everybody else. But in terms of at scale, it's the great one.
Yeah. Which part of Utah do you live in?
So I live an hour north of Salt Lake.
Okay. Got it. Are you familiar with the Uinta Basin area?
Yeah.
It's like a little northeast of Salt Lake City. You can see my UFO on the back of the wall here. That's why that's like a big, Skinwalker Ranch up there. And, Brandon Fugel's a big, is a, in the Church of Latter-day Saints. And, he's the owner of that and stuff. So, you know.
I know of Brandon Fugel. I think he's big in commercial real estate, right?
Huge. Yeah. He's probably the biggest commercial real estate in the Southwest. Yeah.
I see his name everywhere.
Yeah,
that's cool.
But yeah, he owns that, and is on the History Channel and Discovery Channel and all that kind of stuff.
That's cool. Yeah, we get a lot.
A little off topic, but had to push
like
that in there.
I've heard. I've actually never been to Utah. I don't think I've ever been there. I used to live in Colorado, so we were close, but never actually been.
Yeah. Very similar, and probably like June, July, August, it's legendary here. And even like September and May, some people love it for the snow and winter. That's just not me, but I'm right in the season of love it right now.
Yeah, that's my uncle. They live in Wyoming, and he's like, I love 9 feet of snow. I was like, that sounds miserable.
Not me.
Not for me.
Also, a little bit off topic, when you talked about, some of the books that influenced you, you got a huge bookshelf behind you. So if you were to pick one off of there, what would be kind of your favorite right now?
Give me a general. Give me like a rough topic, because I have favorites.
Let's just say kind of self-development type stuff.
Like becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
I'm gonna go out of mainstream, and I'm gonna say The Rhythm of Life.
Rhythm of Life. Okay.
Written by Matthew Kelly. I've referred this one to a few people, and a lot of them come back like, this book was amazing. All about becoming the best version of yourself. This guy, I think he's like Catholic priest, but like started on like the speaking circuit nationally when he was like 14 or something like that. He just was born with a different brain that is all the way up here. And it's not necessarily religious, It's just the whole principle of the book is becoming the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
And it's awesome book.
Cool.
I
Yeah,
haven't read
I
that
just looked it up on Amazon. Yeah, I always like to ask, what people are reading and what influences them and gets their gets their insides going.
That's one of the few that I will reread and reread.
Cool.
Nice. I like that. I'm curious. So this is something I've noticed, like, right in the last month, right? A lot of our properties are sticking around a little longer on the MLS.
Mhm.
A little harder to sell. Things are taking a little bit longer. People are also seeming to want to sell a little bit less with interest rates, kind of changing. So kind of curious, like, what you guys are seeing either in your own business or clients' businesses, and how you guys are navigating that right now, because it's something I get asked a lot, and I've got some of my own ideas around it, but definitely curious how you think about that.
Oh, I think about that all the time. And I will say the longer I do this, the more that I realize how much the market matters. Like we are on, we're all in boats on a tide that are raising and going up and down with the tide of the market. And I think if there's one thing we don't do nearly enough of as an industry, it's factor in what the market is giving us and taking advantage of what all of the different markets of the moment are. So, and even I just did a training with my team earlier on, hey, these are all the levers out there that affect cost per buy, and, response rates and things like that. And one of them that we talked about is the market. I can tell you across all of Investor Machine nationwide, cost per lead was less in February, March than cost per lead is right now in June, July. Because, and it's the same across all of my marketing channels. It's just, there's less people calling, there's less people choosing to sell. If you ever, and even like, so there's national trends that go over the year and things like that with interest rates, but there's also the thing that I don't think I give enough credit to, especially recently, is seasonality. If you ever look at like a Johnsburn real estate graph or any of the major people, they all look like this within a year. And it's because you've got this element of seasonality that just kind of rolls and flows through in there. So you have the spring rush, then you have a little bit of lull for the summer, and then from there it's going to vary significantly market to market. If you're in Florida, it's going to be different than if you're in Minnesota and things like that. But like, it's important to know and understand what your market is giving you currently, both on the short-term seasonality as well as the long-term, and which levers are pulled to hard and which levers are pulled to easy, because there's different things that make more sense given in the market. There's some times where, like if you're coming up on a slowdown season for sales, you're going to want to hurry on construction to make sure your projects get done, so that you can catch the window before the stuff starts sitting for a little while. Also, something else that definitely plays into this is trailing sentiment. Sentiment matters a lot. So homeowners run about 3 to 6 months behind what it really is. So right now sucks. Because so you have, you have what it is currently. Most of your flippers are running 30 to 60 days behind, and your average seller is running 90 to 180 days behind what it really is. So you have seasons where that's great. When the market's going up really quickly, and sellers think the market is here and it's really here, you have investors that will get deals literally just on the difference between sentiment, right? So your buyer thinks it could be worth this, especially when the market's going up. The home's worth this, the buyer thinks it could be worth this, and the seller thinks it's worth this. So if you are assigning contracts, you can make money just in the middle between those two. But then you get the market of right now, which this isn't the first time we've had this. The second half of 22 was all of this as well, which is the seller still thinks it's worth this because they're tracking what it was 6 months ago and what they saw their friend sold for. The buyer, if you're a wholesaler, just sold their last home for less than what they thought they were going to sell it for. And so now they're thinking it could be worth all the way down here, and it's actually worth here. And you're trying to figure out a margin in between those two. It can be a challenge.
Yeah. Well, especially when you've got, like you're saying, people are thinking it's worth this and it's worth this, bridging that gap is a very challenging thing to do because, like you said, they saw their friend sell it 6 months ago for what they're expecting to, when that's not how the market actually is at this point too. And there's I forget the name of the video, but it's by, I think it's Ray Dalio. He's got a really good video on YouTube talking about how markets change and adjust, and how it's always like you're going like this with your finger, right? It's always going up and down over. It's like a 70 to 90 year period, and then a 6 to 8 year period, and then there's little ones inside of there too. And when you can understand those and realize what those are, is when you can start to understand the best times to do certain things. So I think a lot of people they'll look at the 12-month window and forget the 6-year window, and then forget the 70-year window, right? And forget 100%. All of those differences. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because every market is giving something of the moment, right? So the market of today, the market of 3 years ago was giving buy and holds. I was keeping everything I could keep then, because I was getting commercial financing that didn't count as one of my 10, 30 years, no balloon, no rate adjust for 3 point something, right? Like, you go get as much of that money as you can when the market of the moment is giving you that. The market of the moment today is not giving that anymore. So the only rentals you're able to keep in especially major markets like Denver, Salt Lake, is going to be seller finance. So you make sure you're well trained on seller finance. Because of that, if you're a person who assigns contracts, people are paying the most they've ever paid for seller finance contracts. So again, I understand the market of the moment. I'm going to put more emphasis on seller finance. I understand the market of the moment, and that is to say, people have been used to home selling in 2 weeks for a long, long time, and now it's taking maybe a month, 2 months. So a great market of the moment is the MLS. If now's the time to go pick up the MLS strategy and go send low offers on homes that have been sitting on the market for 30 days. We've had a run up in equity, so people have equity. So people have equity, but are not used to being patient. And so that's a group that is, you're going to be much more likely at selling at your MLS strategy than you were in the market of 2021 and the first half of 2022. So you just have to know what it is and be pulling your different levers as a business owner, saying, this is my expectations. And it's the same even with my marketing. I have an idea of what my marketing responses and returns and everything else should look like based off of the seasonality and the market that I'm in. It saves me from, in January, February saying, holy crap, everything's amazing, I got to quadruple down on all of this. Well, I'm riding a market wave. And it also saves me from right now going, I got to turn it all off. Everything about my system and marketing is broken, because I understand it's just the part of the marketing wave. And you kind of get an idea of how long is this going to last. And sometimes they suck. Second half of 2022, I broke even. I actually lost just a little bit. I would have come out ahead the second half of 2022 if I would have just shut the business down. And we were operating one of the best cleanest businesses we ever had been, but it was just such a challenging market at that point in Utah. That's where we were at. But then, because I kept the team, because I kept the marketing going, because I kept everything, I earned the right to go and crush it in 2023 because we had the momentum and we kept going.
Yep. Yeah.
That's how you be a multi-cycle business, which is my ultimate goal. I want to be here for the whole circle, round and round and round. I don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, hedge funds are buying and I can text. I'm going to do that until I can't anymore. Then I'm going to move on to Bitcoin. Then I'm going to move on to Amazon stores. Then I'm going to move on to whatever. Like, the goal is establish a long-term multi-cycle business. And I'm not judging others if that's their goal. It's a closer over more thing. I don't just want more. This is my goal. If that's your goal, more power to you.
Right. Well, and you see that all the time too in cycle. I've seen it in cycles anyway, where it's those people that were in real estate. Well, now they're doing Forex, and now they're doing Bitcoin, and now they're, like I said, Amazon stores or TikTok shops or whatever. And it's like to me,
it's when they start selling MLMs that it's like, because that in Utah especially, that's included in the cycle, right?
Okay.
That's when you get the message. It's like, hey, bud, how are you? I know we haven't talked for a while. Do you want to meet up? Uh-oh.
Yeah. Well, why? What do you want?
I know why you want to meet up.
Hey, I'm having a party. Do you mind bringing the ice?
Yeah. You're gonna sell me Mary
What's your
Kay
opinion on essential oils?
Yeah, essential
Right.
oils, that's the big
I
one.
tease, but
Yep.
I will tell you at the Lewis house, I think we've been in and out of, like, before I started real estate, I think we made it our way in and out of like 3 or 4 MLMs. It's part of the Utah culture. They all
That's fair.
start here and then they spread.
That's fair. I
Yeah.
I will say, nobody really knows this. We're part of one MLM only so we can buy the stuff for really cheap, and it's like essential oils that my wife likes. Like, only reason why we pay like $100
Yeah,
a year or whatever to pay
you
into
get the discounted rate.
get that
We were
doTERRA for
doTERRA
cheaper.
Yeah, that was my ex-wife, doTERRA. That was exactly it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we
Yep.
love doTERRA in Utah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
my
got
wife's a big
doTERRA
fan.
all over this house. Actually, I put the peppermint and lemon drops in the garbage disposal all the time.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah,
That's
makes it
fine.
nice and refreshing. Jason, how are you seeing this particular election cycle affecting things? Because I know when I'm on, appointments and visiting houses and talking to sellers, they're always talking about it here in St. Louis. I mean, I've got a couple. I'm like, why did you even call me in the first place? That are like, well, I'm not doing anything until after the election. I'm not doing anything after the election, and people are just so focused on that. Are you seeing any trends in that right now?
I would say there's definitely, it affects sentiment, right? Like,
Yeah.
you have to take into account sentiment, and there does seem to be. So, and again, if there's one thing I've learned from Investor Machine, it's there's what we're seeing nationally and what we're seeing in each individual market, and they are not the same.
Mm-hmm.
Not only are the lists that we build not the same, but even when we had like John Burns come and talk to us at Collective Genius, who's a super good economist, he always shows a graph to say, hey, in the cycle, these markets are in this cycle, these markets are in this cycle, these MSAs are in this cycle. So it's going to be wildly different based off of MSA that you're in. But what we're seeing in Utah and a lot of other markets is you have sellers that have waited and waited and waited for interest rates to drop, and they just kind of are done. They can't wait anymore. They need to move. They made it as long as they could, but not the same proportionate number of buyers are going to buy. So you're seeing inventory creep up. More and more and more houses sitting on the market. Those buyers could be waiting for the election. The main one that I'm hearing here is that they're waiting for interest rates to drop. Interest rates to drop. You had Jerome Powell just recently say, hey, we're thinking it's coming later this year. Most people are saying, hey, we're thinking up to 2 rate drops this year. And so they're saying, if I can just wait a little bit, then I'll know the world didn't explode because of the election, and I'll know that interest rates drop and I'll have a little bit less.
Yeah.
I was telling a friend just yesterday, my opinion is right now is the best time there may ever be in the future to buy a home. So if you're on this show and you're saying, hey, is now a good time to buy? Yes, because guess what's going to happen later this year? As soon as those interest rates drop a little bit, all those sitting on the sidelines buyers come back, and now prices start moving up again, commensurate to it. So if you're looking for a great time to be in, again, I don't have a crystal ball, but Jason's opinion, we're in a little bit of a weird seasonal election interest rate lull right now that's got a couple months left. The flips that you're buying right now are probably going to sell really quick later this year. And the tough part about these recordings is you never know if this is going to age well, right? Like 3 months from now, we may watch.
That's fair.
Dude, I was dead wrong. And I've been dead wrong before, right? When COVID first happened, I was Chicken Little. I was like, sell. I fire sold everything. I told my grandma to sell her house. And then she moved in with my aunt for a while she was building. And I was like, sell. And I executed like a champion, right? In like 2 weeks, I went from owning everything to owning nothing besides my long-term rentals. And I was ready for the crash. But that's what all the smart people were saying. They didn't realize that the Fed was going to come in and go print trillions to raise it way up. And so like dead wrong in that instance. So I learned definitely then that I don't predict the future, but if I were to predict the future, it would be, I'm betting by this fall, you have an interest rate drop, bunch of buyers flock back in, and it's kind of a off to the races, more normal, exciting market.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think like you said, those rates drop, inventory drops, everything sells, which makes everything more expensive. I think in our primary residence, when we had COVID, like because we bought in 2019 to now is almost like a $300,000 increase in the value of our house. And like,
isn't it wild?
It was only like, we've got it for like 180, you know what I mean? Like we got it at a great deal. and it's worth like almost 5. It's like it's a wild difference in that time frame, and I think you'll see that same thing coming as that happens.
I don't know that it's going to be
agree.
quite the same degree as then,
Sure.
because you still definitely have affordability problems. I think it'll be more gradual appreciation. I mean, if you look at what monthly payments were in 2019 compared to what monthly payments are now on the same home, it's like a substantially larger, and wages just haven't kept up.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying I think we have a COVID boom coming, but most smart people that I know are predicting, 3 to 5% appreciation over that next year.
Yeah. Which I think it was you at CG in January. You were talking about increases in property values over the last like 75 years. Was that you who gave that presentation?
That was Barry.
Was it Barry?
Yeah, Barry Habib. Who?
That's right, because he was talking about it was like
presentation.
Every single year went up.
Presentation, and he's like 100x smarter than me on this stuff. He actually has won the Crystal Ball Award 3 times.
Okay. Because I think, if I remember correctly, he was talking about every year since like the 30s or the 40s, or I think since after World War II, pricing on houses has increased every single year, with the exception of 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's gone.
It was an incredible presentation, the way he explained it, and I've leaned in on it ever since.
Yeah, super fascinating. So it's one of those things I think for people to remember is that historically, it's going to continue to appreciate, right? Except for that, I think it was in the 70s. There was a lull in the 70s where things went down for a little bit, but so.
And then obviously 2008.
Yeah, there too.
Yeah.
One question I had for you, because you've studied this stuff a lot, learned a lot about just how markets work and all that kind of stuff. For people who are listening who might not have a great grasp on that, where would you recommend for people to go to start learning about that stuff? Any books
That's
or
a great question.
Anything like that?
So the realtor world's way better at this than the investor world. So one good thing to do is just get connected with a realtor who tracks this stuff. And you need to know a few key numbers to know is how many listings are there on the MLS compared to what there were before? What is the median price point doing compared to what there was before? And then you kind of want to look at, so when they talk about inventory, they'll talk about it in months. And that is, if no one else listed a home at the buyers that we have now, how many months would it take for all of those homes to be sold?
Mm-hmm.
So when that number's going up pretty quickly, okay, we're in a slowing market. When that number's going down pretty quickly, we're in a more competitive market. So that would be the first one that I would look at, is just how's inventory and what's happening to median price point in your area. What does Leon at CG always say? Like, what's the 0 to 1? I could run through this full complex thing where, realtor.com and the St. Louis Fed and, and following Johns Burns and Barry and all this other stuff. If you start with those 2, you'll be good. We actually, one of the projects we're working on in Investor Machine is for part of our quarterly. So by the way, good news for you guys. Every quarter, the first thing we're going to go over with you is, hey, we did all of the deep research nationally and in your market, and this is what we're seeing this quarter and what it looks like is going to happen next to help you with your marketing campaign, because it's one of the factors that we need to look into when figuring out what and where and how to do a list mail marketing campaign. So for you guys, we'll do the lifting for you. But otherwise, if you just want it simple, figure out what's inventory in your market and median price point, and if it's getting worse or if it's getting better.
Perfect. I love it, because I think that's something a lot of people don't understand, and it's something
I
I've
did
had to
for
learn
a long time.
Yeah, it's something I'm just now starting to understand over this last, year or so. That 2 years ago, I'm like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure what you mean. So that's great.
Yeah, realtors are way better at this than we are. Lenders are way better than this than we are. Mm-hmm. We just need to catch up to them.
Agreed. Let's talk about a little bit more about Investor Machine. So somebody comes on board as a client, right? And first, and one thing I'll say before this is, I don't think I've ever heard a bad thing about Investor Machine personally. To my knowledge, I haven't heard any bad things. I've heard nothing but great reviews from you guys. and good
Awesome.
experiences and everything like that too, right? But if someone's, because I know you've got much more than just the data part, right? You do some of the analysis, can help them with the marketing. So if someone's interested in working with you guys, how do you explain this as easily as possible to somebody that might be interested in working with you guys?
Yeah. So it probably comes back to kind of what I talked about earlier, which is we're obsessed with the percentages better than average, right? The reason that you don't just do every door direct mail with a basic I want to buy your house card is because or the reason you pay somebody to not just send everyone a mailer with a generic card is because you want to do better than average. So we look at what is every possible thing that we could control and scale that would increase that percentage. So honestly, the biggest lever is the list. You can have a rockin' creative, and you can be amazing at answering the phone, you can be amazing at closing, and you can be amazing at everything. But if you mail a big list of people that are never going to sell to an investor, it's all for naught, right? It's kind of like hiring. You could be an amazing interviewer and an amazing trainer, but if you sucked at sourcing, you still wound up with a turd, right? Like you started with 10 turds, you interviewed the 10 turds really well, you trained the one turd that you picked really well, and you ended with a turd. The turd was the turd started at sourcing, right? So list is going to be your most important, which is, okay, we're going to mail 20,000 people. How can we possibly get the largest number of those 20,000 to be the ones that went and sold to investors? Then it moves to the creative. How do we pick a creative that's going to get the largest number of those people to respond to us? And the hard part is it's not just about who's going to sell to an investor. It's about who would respond to direct mail marketing. That's a different demographic as well. We do our own analysis on so we analyze who sold to investors in the market, and then we analyze who sold to, who actually responded to our types of marketing. What do they want to see? So then it's the creative. Then from there, the phone rings, and then it's, did you answer the phone? So we actually will track and score all of your phone answers as well. And we'll say, hey, good job, you answered the phone, you talked right, etc. And then did appointments to get scheduled. And then from there, we turn it over to you. But we basically have a step from there to there. And the idea behind it is it's turnkey. So you pay the money. We say, hey, this is our suggestion on the list. Do you agree? You come back and say, no, that one's the hood. I don't want to buy there. We say, cool. We knock out that zip code. And then we say, awesome. This is the list. This is the creative. We're going to mail these guys every 30 days. We're going to mail these guys every 60 days. These ones we may mail even more frequently than that because they just had a notice of default filed on Friday. Therefore, we're going to mail them on Wednesday. And we run the whole system, making sure it all happens. And then your job is answer the phone.
Yep. I like it. Makes a lot of sense. And answer your phone.
I know a place. I was going to say, I know a place that can answer the phone for you if you're listening.
Yeah, you might.
Call Porter.
Yes, exactly. So I can't.
Absolutely. That's another one I better make sure that I have an affiliate for because I send people to Call Porter all the time.
I whenever like, I saw your name on the calendar invite for this podcast, I was like, I've definitely have heard people throw around Jason Lewis. I just didn't equate it to you at Investor Machine and CG. But now I will. So we'll make sure that we get that all taken care of for you.
Yep.
So my two favorite things, there's two different ways to use Call Porter. One of them is, and really a call center in general, right? Because you guys have a lot of competitors over there. Number one is have them be your primary answerer. So they answer, they schedule the appointment, they scrub out, they do all of it. The other is what I call the backup. Option A, Call Porter is the only option. Like everybody else, if you let them talk to your seller for a long time, you're going to regret it because they don't understand the industry. They're going to say, my favorite thing is I have written on there, like, you may not ask how to spell any of the cities, right? Please, I'm begging you, don't ask how to spell Ogden. It's game over once you've asked how to spell Ogden. But the other thing that I think a lot of people don't use call centers for where they should is the backup. Because they're like, hey, I'll answer the phone. That's great. I respect fully that you want to answer the phone, but we have to balance capability and availability. So you have a high capability and that's great. but Call Porter has an infinite availability, and that's really tough to beat. So let it ring to you. And if you don't answer it, or if your lead managers don't answer it, then let it go to Call Porter. Make sure that all the calls get answered by somebody good. And I mean, the cost is negligible compared to one deal because you answered every single call along the way. And I monitor response rates. We collectively, as a species of real estate investors, are not great at answering the phone at the level that we should.
No. Yeah. And I was going to say, if you spend money on marketing, just answer the phone. You're already paying for that phone to ring. Answer the phone.
And by the way, if you ever want a fun thought experiment to prove if I'm right, Google Sell My House Fast. Go get on the top 30 investor carrot websites, that are all people wanting to sell your house in your market. Call all of them and then track how many of them answer and or call you back, and you will be shocked.
I need to tell them about the ad you did.
Closing can be $100,000. It's shocking how many aren't going to answer and or call you back when you call. Don't be that one.
Vinny did an ad. I'll let him tell you about it.
We put together an ad, a Call Porter ad, where I literally had a list given to me, that exact thing, just in Google. I just had people just say, just find people in Google. Don't tell me who they are, but I want them in different states, whatever. And we live called investors, and 9 out of 10 did not pick up. And just randomly, the one that did pick up did have Call Porter, and that was not planned at all. I'm just 100%. And I told people in the ad, I said, if you don't believe that that's what happened, you think we're just making this shit up, we'll send you the full entire process of how this all happened, that and everybody else knew that this was not a Call Porter client.
Full unedited videos. We'll send it to you.
Yeah, full unedited video. And then I was like, I'm just going to do this on Instagram Live too. So I did it again on Instagram Live, where Justin and Jeremy just randomly picked some, carrot websites or whatever, and I called them.
A couple cities and states.
Yeah, 7 out of 10 did not answer. 3 did. And then while it was on live on Instagram, I had my phone up to the microphone, and I'm actually talking to the investors and like, hey, like, why have you answered your phone? Like, how have you answered your phone? And all 3 of them actually were like giving me, like, hey, here's what I do. This is my process. So it was super cool. Like, none of them were pissed off that I called them and had them on live, on Instagram. But it just went to show, like, most of these people are not answering their phones. Only 1 of the 7 actually called back. And I tracked that for, a week. And the others just never did anything, right? Just went to voicemail, left a voicemail. And I would leave a voicemail and say, hey, this is so-and-so, give me a call back. Nothing.
So I've got a direct mail call flow hack that may help a lot of your listeners. Because you talked about the call flow. I can give you this one. So here's what I do. So I don't answer the mail calls. I probably haven't answered a mail call in 4 years, 5 years. But my name and my face is what's on the card. So what I will do is, as soon as they call in, it says, hey, this is Jason. Thanks so much for calling. To get a cash offer on your home or to learn more about how the process works, press 1. If you'd like to be taken off the list, press 2. I think it's a little longer than that. Like, say, press 1 to be transferred to a member of the team, or press 2. It's in there. So if they press 2, it goes straight to my friends at Call Porter, because it saves my lead managers from having to take the beating, right?
There you go.
Which it is. When you've been told, I mean, if you were to, do like an AI search through all of my all mail calls that I've ever gotten of all time, and you were to search the F word, I think you'd get like 2,000 of them, right? And that's in Channel Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, nice Utah. I can't imagine what it would be in like Jersey, or Philly or something like that. So 2 goes straight to Call Porter. 1 rings to my team for 5 to 10 rings. And then if they don't answer, then it comes back to the call center after to make sure all calls get answered and to make sure that my team isn't getting beat up with takeoff list calls. Because pretty soon there's just something demotivating about you're sitting at dinner with your wife on a Friday night. The bat phone rings, it's the mail call, and you're like, I gotta go. You step out on your wife to have somebody tell you that you're the worst person on earth, and then you go back in. Like, it just makes you not want to answer it the next time.
Yeah, and we've got a pretty similar call flow. I mean, we don't have the IVR built in, which I would love to do. I, need to talk about that, but it will ring on Matt and I's phone simultaneously, so that we have the option to grab it in about 3 or 4 rings, so about 15 seconds. If we don't, then it goes to call porter. And we only have the option to answer between the hours of 9 to 5 p.m. Nights and weekends, it never goes to Matt and I. It always goes to call porter, because I don't want to have to answer at night or on the weekends. So we kind of set it up that way. I actually did a whole marketing campaign in April. And April was our best month so far at call porter, specifically designed on backup and overflow, and targeting investors in that way, because there is those holes, or are those cracks where people are falling through. And if we can, be that backup, that overflow plan for them, they see the return on investment on it immediately. So,
yeah, agreed. Did Jason, did we ever tell you that's how we started call porter, or why we started call porter in the first place?
It's not surprising.
Yeah, my brother
Ryan
had
businesses start out of, holy crap, this option doesn't exist.
Well,
I'm gonna go make it.
And this one was,
or everything's terrible besides mine.
Yeah, there you go. I think it was like my brother was out on a date with his wife, and it was one of those seller calls that rang, and he was like, "Nah, I'm not going to answer it. I'm going to spend the time with my wife," and it's probably the right decision, honestly, long term. But didn't call. The guy left him a voicemail, and he called him back the next morning, and the guy was like, "Yeah," he's like, "I went with somebody else because they answered the phone," and he was like, "I just lost like 15, 20 grand on that deal." He's like, "But my wife's not mad at me." But that's originally why that business started, was because of that one call on a Friday night out with his wife, and he decided not to answer the phone call and lost out on a deal on it because of it. So super funny how things happen. Yep. Well, cool. If people want to reach out to you and check out Investor Machine and get on a phone call with you guys and work with you, how do they best reach out to you guys?
Yeah. So it's going to be theinvestormachine.com, and we're going to create theinvestormachine.com/BPM for Ballpoint Marketing. We'll get you a discount because Perfect. You came through here, because we love you guys. I'm doing my part of my mail with you guys. You're doing your mail through list. We love working with you guys, and
likewise,
would love to make sure your audience gets the hookups.
Yep. Yeah, you guys just helped out a really, really good friend of ours that'll be using Ballpoint too, but he's out on the East Coast. So super excited to see his results too. Yeah. Well, awesome. I really appreciate you coming on, Jason. I always love talking with you. I learn more every single time about things I didn't know about. So I appreciate you coming on, man. This was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, dude.